welcome to another episode of Asperger's Answers. With me, as usual, is the team. We have Miss Heather, who is representing her purple today.
That's right.
And then, obviously, myself, our wonderful coach, Lauren, and Mr. Frank.
Hello.
So, today we have a great show. We're talking about all sorts of varied topics. If you've seen the show before, you know how sort of all over the place we can get with the topics because we don't decide them. They come from our AE Plus support group, and we just pick 3 topics each week that people ask in our AE Plus support group, and then we answer them in more depth here because while we are all sort of on there answering questions, it's Facebook. You're going to type out a 10-page diatribe to each question that is asked. It's generally a sentence or two with, oh, here's some more information. But sometimes we like to give it that more information. We like to say, okay, this deserves a little bit more thought, a little bit more attention to it. So if you'd like to join AE Plus, there is a link in the description where you can join our support community. And we would love to have you. We got some cool new stuff happening in AE Plus very soon, and we have an awesome Minecraft server as well for people with Asperger's. And in addition to the support group, you also get Q&A calls with Lauren. We're going to be starting to work on meetups and adding a whole bunch of new courses and stuff to AE Plus as well. So with that being said, let's jump right in. We usually answer 3 questions per show and just take, a good solid 15 to 20 minutes to discuss each one. The first one comes from Karen, and Karen says, so my son's high school called me today and asked me to pick him up. He was rude to a teacher and then refused to go to the principal's office when asked. 3 other adults tried to get him to go to the office, but he didn't budge. The principal said that in cases like this, he would normally call the police, but he didn't this time. They know all about his diagnosis, etc. I've really conflicted feelings about this. On one hand, my son is on the spectrum and is very rigid thinking about what is wrong and right. If he doesn't feel the teacher has a good reason for sending him out of the classroom, then he won't go. But should they make an exception in how they deal with him? He does have to be able to function in society, so maybe they're right. He's in 10th grade, very high functioning. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? No, not at all. So the next one, no, I'm kidding.
Yes, we have a lot of thoughts on this, yes. Yes, we do.
I have to pull that joke once in a while because it's just so like, no, never, no thoughts at all. Frank pointed this out before the show. Why is the principal going to call the police because a kid refuses to move?
Well, I can tell you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I know why, but like, I mean, I can tell you because the principal is scared and doesn't have any other tools, and so is looking to a higher authority for what to do.
Well, there are other reasons. Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the reasons. But for me, to answer the core question here of should we make an exception to how they deal with him, no. I mean, like, it's what I mean by that is that he is who he is. And you can try and make an exception to deal with him, but it's not going to work. He's just going to get dug in and dug in and dug in more and more and more. The thing is, since he's in 10th grade, what I would do, honestly, just let him sort of finish. Do what you can to finish so that he can go and do what he needs to do, because he's very much like, screw you. Because I was that way a lot as well in school. I don't even know how I did this, but in my senior year of high school, I had all the teachers wrapped around my finger to the point where we both sort of agreed that it was best for me to just do whatever I wanted. So I was just in the computer lab a lot, fixing computers. But at a certain point, it's just sort of like, just let him be in the corner and do his own thing, and then he'll go out into the real world and do the system. But to answer the core question, he does have Asperger's, and he is on the spectrum. But that doesn't mean that they're right, because even if they're right, he's not going to change. Like, just by you saying, well, you need to do this, he's still going to go, no, I don't. Thank you very much. So, to be honest, I think the point is moot of should we allow it or not, because he's going to do what he's going to do and support him.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, recently realizing that I'm on the spectrum myself, and also growing up, my father's profession was educational administration, and he was a very effective principal for quite a while. And so do you mind if I
go for it?
Speak to this, because I have some thoughts about that, and a lot of them are actually in his voice. My father liked to deal with things in what's frequently referred to as the least restrictive manner. He didn't like to escalate things if they didn't need to be escalated, and he found patience to be a much better tool than a hammer. So, in my opinion, first off, why is a school calling the police over nonviolent? If the child is not being nonviolent, if the main issue is that they're being obstructionist towards the classroom, then that is a school policy issue. And should they make an exception or not? That is a good question. Does he have a 504 IEP plan that allows him extra time to process things that come up that he's having rigidity about? I think that's a very, very important thing to consider, because if this sort of rigidity leads to somebody calling the police, you have then lost control over the situation entirely, and it is then entirely a legal and criminal matter. And so, yes, I think exceptions should be made for people who don't need to be referred to the criminal justice system, especially juveniles with perceived neurological differences.
And especially juveniles with perceived neurological differences who are literally doing nothing wrong and just sitting still.
Well, they are doing something wrong.
I mean, but they
are. I mean, there is...
Wrong is subjective in this case.
Wrong is subjective. Yeah. He is causing a disciplinary obstruction in the classroom, and I get that, because classroom management is really critical. Yeah. He is interrupting other kids' education, and the teacher does have to manage that. Teaching to the test now mandates that teachers have very little extra time, so there's real pressure there to get that dealt with and to move on. Now, did anybody explain to him that rudeness is against the rules and he had to go? Because oftentimes, if a kid understands why, you're kind of sitting here getting in the way of everything, I need you to go and sort this out with the principal. If nobody explained why, then you have a problem there of communication.
Yeah.
That being said,
everyone took a deep breath. And
he does have to function in society, and he has to find his own terms to do it. So my feeling is, the more you can work with him and with the teacher and have an accommodation, maybe even to think ahead and set up a place he can go to calm down when he gets in defense mode, which is what this is, then you have a least restrictive and more positive outcome to a situation like this, because rigidity is a characteristic of Asperger's. It just is. If you don't know why, you see no reason to proceed. And while that can be perceived as arrogance, it's actually neurological processing. It is a neurological subroutine. So I feel like I don't have enough information to speak of this, to speak to this really detailed, but I respect your conflict, and I respect how they handled it a lot, because what they did was not introduce somebody who didn't deserve it to an already overwhelmed criminal justice system. The cop could have, given him a talking to and scared him, but he's already in defense mode, and he's already probably shut down. So I think that they really took the right path here. It's not easy. I mean, if you're asking for how can it be easy, we don't have a good answer for that. Yep. All we can say is the respect of the individual is really what they showed here, and I'm really proud of that school for handling it that way.
Oh, you have something
Frank
else to say too.
Totally wants to speak. We can tell.
Well, I've actually been in this situation of,
On which side?
Which side? Parent or the kid?
The kid.
You were the kid.
I definitely was the kid.
Okay.
And while I realized I was being rude to the teacher, and one of the things is did he even realize he was being rude to the teacher? Because I know that I've come across in situations or things, and what doesn't make sense to me, or that, I don't realize necessarily how I'm coming across, and not explaining or listening, he probably wasn't listened to, or at least he felt that way, which is going to, I don't know, take some heels in, it's like, fine, okay. Why a police officer would ever be brought into this type of situation is kind of beyond me. But the biggest thing is silence.
The biggest thing.
It is the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Do you want to help me?
No, it's okay. I think the school did a reasonable job. I don't understand the whole threatening of the police. It wouldn't really do anything for him. I mean, they're going to come in and talk to him. What is the outcome? What are they going to arrest him for? Like, what is the criminal thing? I think that needs to be looked at and asked. Why nonviolent, peaceful protest at best. So anyway, go ahead, Lauren, you have some.
Okay, so I'm coming from the neurotypical point of view, which is usually what ends up happening here as I take my thoughts on why they called the police. Probably he was being very rigid and would not physically move, and unfortunately the principal went, well, I'm going to make you move. So I'm going to bring the police in to physically remove you. And I have a feeling that's what was going on there, because if a teacher touches a child in any way, shape, or form, it's a big mess. So, But if a police officer comes in and removes a child, it was a power play, I think, on the part of the principal, which I don't know if I agree
But
with.
they didn't. They didn't.
But he said he typically does.
Right.
So if that's the case, then the principal's just like playing a safe line. And what I think was happening here is people with Asperger's, kids in general, but people with Asperger's really need to understand the logical, cerebral, bullet-pointed reason why they need to do what they need to do.
And if we don't, we won't.
Bingo. And it's a very simple and easy thing that NTs really complicate. We completely complicate this, and it's very, very simple and easy. Once you get your son home, I mean, this obviously has happened, but if this situation were happening again, get someone in there to actually explain to the child what is going on, how his behavior is appearing, how it's affecting the people around him, and why he needs to leave. Chances are he'll get up and leave at that point. Then when you're at home with him in a quiet space, when everything's calmed down, talk to him about it, explain to him what was not appropriate about his behavior. Here's the thing, it's really important for him to start taking accountability for his own actions also at this age, because we are dealing with he'll be a young adult and on his own, or maneuvering out in the world if he's not on his own very soon. It's important for him to realize how his actions are affecting others and take responsibility for those actions. He just probably doesn't understand exactly what went on.
That's strictly just doesn't understand.
He does, and so it's important for you as a parent to line out exactly how it appeared, what happened, how to avoid it in the future. Come up with a plan with him. And then don't forget, he's in 10th grade, so he's got a lot of hormones going on too, which, when we have hormonal outbursts sometimes, especially our gender, we don't see it until it's over with. So that could actually be going on with him as well. So just explanation and a plan on how to handle it later, and then make him accountable, especially if he's very high functioning. He needs that skill set. So that's my 2 cents.
I think also, just to add, it could be that in this sort of situation, it depends on how willing the staff is to work with you, but it could be that the immediate, in the moment, it's kind of shaming to be sent to the principal's office. And so for this child, it could be worked out that you have an alternative consequence to rudeness. Honestly, I'm not sure what that is right now, but I know that there are always options. And when people feel backed into a corner, it's usually because they've put themselves there. If you can get out of defense mode, get the teacher out of defense mode, make sure the principal is working with you, then you can think up other options and say, if you are rude now, then there will be consequences to this, and they're not going to be immediate, and you can sit with that. You have options. You always have options. And I'm glad they didn't call the police in this circumstance.
Yeah, it's a little harsh, actually. Yeah. But I think that's
call the police.
I think that's where the principal was going with it. Is like, if you're not going to move, I'm going to make you move, and that's not appropriate.
Well, I think also there are, with some students, and it's not the majority of students, but with some students, certain acts of disobedience of that kind can escalate fairly quickly depending on the person. Hormonal outbursts, that certain age, people who are very upset about things. And it has the potential to get big quick, and it has the potential to get big quick with the body of a 16 or 17-year-old, which is not the same as an outburst in kindergarten. And so the principal is responsible for managing the educational environment of all these students. And the principal does not always have a chance to spend 4 hours talking somebody back from an emotional ledge. So I get that they want to deal with it effectively and efficiently.
Well, and are you finished? Okay. Also, Heather mentioned an IEP in there earlier, and one thing because we're writing a high school class right now, and so one of the things that I've gotten a huge consensus on with the parents out there is sitting down with the teachers before the school year starts with the child and coming up with a plan and letting the teacher know about the triggers the child might have and how it needs to be handled. A lot of it is teachers they're overwhelmed. right? They got a lot of students to care for, and we've got high school students, so that's like a whole nother level. But the thing is educating the teacher on, and having your child advocate for himself. This is what happens when, when I melt down, this is what happens, this is how we need to handle it. Actually, this entire situation could have been not had to have happened if that conversation had been at the I can't speak at the beginning of the year.
You know what we mean.
Yeah, so that's something to think about.
And just
even
to
now.
add to that, if you don't have a diagnosis and you don't feel like you can qualify for an IEP, please be aware that a 504 plan is often an option, and parents can just ask for that. That does not require documentation, and it is binding.
What is a 504?
A 504 plan is an unofficial IEP, but the schools treat it as a plan for the child, and it's just an option for kids that don't necessarily qualify for an IEP but still need accommodations. The 504 plan can exist and function very similarly, and that can also get you some of these sorts of problem-solving accommodations you might need.
Yeah, so there's some solutions.
Yes. Anyway, so let's move on here. Before we do, Sherry said it's her first time on the show, so hello.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hi.
We're glad you're here.
Yes. Let's see. Amy's asking, would the meltdown even happen if the student could communicate what he or she needed? It depends. I think that it's more one of those things where they're so shut down that they couldn't neurologically communicate. Like, they're so shut down that part of their brain wasn't working.
Most of the time, people on the spectrum, the whole point was that he was rude to the teacher. Most of the time, people on the spectrum think they are just being direct, and they honestly don't know that they're being rude. And this is where assuming good faith comes in, and de-escalating a situation, coming in and saying, I know you didn't intend to be rude, I know, or maybe you did intend to be rude, but you should know that it comes off as disrespectful to an authority figure. However you want to explain it. ASPE people also realize that respect for an authority position is different from respect for the person that occupies that position, and ASPE people oftentimes feel like their respect needs to be earned, and they're totally willing to go through the motions for a position, but the person is a different story.
Yeah.
Understanding that dichotomy can take you a long way.
Terry's asking, do we have a new school program to buy? We're working on 4 new school courses, actually, for elementary school, middle school, high school, and college.
Yep.
And those should be out early 2017.
Keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Usually takes us
exciting.
about 6 months or so to fully develop a course through talking about it and refining it and doing research and refining it some more and teaching it to some AE Plus members and refining it some more and then producing it and editing it and making all the graphics and the whole process, filming all the whole thing.
Really excited though.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, and we're kicking around maybe a group coaching type program too for teens. So
Yeah.
keep your eyes and ears open for that.
Yeah.
So let's move right along here to the next question from Julie. Julie just got publicly humiliated for my Aspie's behavior by a stranger in a restaurant today. I was told I need to teach my children some manners. Has this happened to anyone else? What did you say? You know,
all the parents are going.
all the parents are going, okay, here we go. I was about to go on a cruise with my parents, and I always remember this story. It's we were sitting in the hotel restaurant eating breakfast, like literally in an hour, we're about to go to the boat. And there's this lady talking really loudly on her phone, just being really annoying. This was like 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. And then my dad just leans over and goes, can you turn the volume down? She goes, I know phone etiquette. And then just continues to talk the way she was talking. That's sort of what reminds me of this, is that, like, you don't always need to feed the trolls. You can just sort of ignore the people that's like, you need to teach your kids some manner. Thank you for your opinion. Now I'm going to promptly ignore it, move along. Like, you can be thinking that. You don't actually need to engage with them.
Don't even need to make eye contact or acknowledge them, from my perspective. But
my family growing up dealt with a lot of these things with a lot of humor. When we talk about them, we would talk about the range of options we had, from ignoring to completely engaging and everything in between. And one of my favorites was always the response of, you are absolutely right. I have clearly failed as a parent. Thank you so much for offering me this wisdom and being really genuine about it. I really appreciate that. I would have never known. And don't crack a smile. Humor is one of the best ways to deal with some of these things. It just helps my heart be more positive. But we do have. You always have options in how you respond to something.
Yeah, the energy it's a two-way thing all the time. One of my favorites, if somebody just does that to me, is I just go, okay. And then, like, that's just, like, full-on halt, stop, and what do you do with that?
It's neutral.
Yeah. But, like, if somebody's coming at you saying, you need to do this, and, like, we get people all the time, emails, how dare you take advantage of these families, you scammer and stuff. And, like, when we did respond to them, before we just started deleting all of them and ignoring them, it was just like, okay. What do you do? No more energy. What do you do with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is... has this happened anywhere else? I'm sure it has. I know we've gotten stares because at one point my son loved being under the table. He loved the enclosed space of it, and he felt safe there in the overwhelming environment of the restaurant. And what do? You encourage him to do the things that you want him to do, and you sit with it. And if you have to leave, then you leave. Everything has to be played by ear. Unfortunately, these people really don't understand
life,
the complications of other people's lives when they approach them. And so I think really the issue is theirs.
And so I have, first of all, we don't know what happened. So
right.
I don't know exactly what behavior actually happened. But the bottom line is, if you know it's not appropriate behavior and it's something that your child does, or may not appear to be appropriate behavior, but the child needs that to do that, like crawling under the table for some reason, there's that factual conversation to have with that child. Again, before you ever go out to eat, say, okay, son, I know that you really like to be under the table. This is why you don't see other people going under the table. Let's come up with a plan that will work for you, that will be comfortable for you, son, that also will maybe be good in a restaurant. Depends on what the behavior is. But explaining to them why you have the expectations that you have in a logical manner will actually bypass a lot of the stuff that actually happens. And as far as social etiquette, screw the other people in the restaurant. Do what's right for your family.
And the way to find that out is to ask your children what's driving the behavior. Yeah. When we found out that he was kind of getting under the table to shield himself from the intensity a little bit, all of a sudden things like earphones and earplugs and sunglasses even can be an option. And then all of a sudden, once again, you have more options, and he looks really cool.
Well, and don't forget to be sensitive as a parent to what's going on with your child. Kids with people with Asperger's, their sensory systems are highly, highly sensitive and overloaded a lot of times. And so is it the best choice to take your child to a crowded restaurant that might be really loud and have horrible smells?
Be themselves.
Well, and they might be not pleasant for the child with that much energy and that much noise, and that the lighting is wrong and the smells are horrible, and that might have been what was causing this child to react. So, is that in the best interest of your family? So that's something you really need to think about.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back, and we're going to continue to talk about parent shaming and a few other things. So see you in just a sec. I remember growing up and not really having many friends, wanting friends, but not having many friends simply because I didn't know how to be social with people.
My name is Heather. I'm the COO here at Asperger Experts, and I'm a mom. My son was diagnosed with Asperger's a little more than a year ago, and he's amazing. I'm trying to raise a productive, independent, self-supporting person. I need support to do that. I can't do it by myself.
So we are back. Lauren just banged her finger. So he's like, "Oh, my finger's being better." Finger. She has a cold pack over there.
It's the middle finger. I won't show.
Yes. Look at the finger. That's.
Look at the finger. That's.
So anyway, we're talking about Julie, who says she got publicly humiliated for her Aspie's behavior. I know we're going to talk about this one a little bit. Okay. By a stranger in a restaurant today. I told I need to teach my child some manners. Has this happened to anyone else? What did you say? I think the overall assumption is that you need to always respond to people. It's like, no, you don't. Like, yeah, you can validate them as a person and stuff, but like something that I've had to learn, doing this work and wanting to help everybody is that I just don't have the time. We have 260,000 people that like us on Facebook.
And thank you for that.
Yeah. We have 170,000 people on our email list, and thank you for that. But just due to the laws of physics, I am unable to spend time with every single one of you and talk to you one-on-one. It can't work that way. You know, it's like...
If anybody is developing a time machine, let us know.
Yeah, please do, like, or the little time turner with that Hermione had, where you can just go and have multiple classes. Like, so...
Cloning.
The thing is that because of that, I don't have time to talk to everybody. So people come and email in their questions, and at first it's like, oh, can you look over my IEP? And I'd be like, okay. And I did it at first. But then, like, I can't do that because that takes 30 minutes to answer an email, and I wish I could answer everybody in that length, but I can't. So you sort of just have to get used to, that's great. Anyway, I'm moving on. Like, I'm sorry that you are uncomfortable right now. Actually, I'm not sorry. It's just you are uncomfortable anyway.
That is not my problem.
Yeah.
One of the ways that we dealt with this proactively was to establish our presence at various family restaurants so that the servers became endeared to my child and became familiar with us, and they knew to put us in a corner where he could squirm a bit if he needed to, and that we didn't interrupt anybody else. So developing those relationships can be important and still give you a space where you can go out and not have to cook and clean up.
What about fidget tools?
Fidget tools can also be good. Fidget tools are excellent.
If you guys saw that Kickstarter with the little fidget cube thing.
Oh, the fidget cube. I'm so excited about the fidget cube.
We ordered 10. Because we're just like, yes.
The things to help keep them, their stress, that they can focus on and get their stress out of their body is really a good idea. Because chances are this child was acting out because it was either he or she was overstimulated or maybe bored. Because
we know your kids are good kids. We know your kids aren't trying to make life harder.
It's not a willful defiance. It never is. It's a being scared. It's a
being overwhelmed.
Being overwhelmed. It's needing something. It's never like, hey, I'm just going to personally offend that person. That just doesn't happen.
No.
Oh, and don't forget also the stranger that said something to you might actually have had stuff going on in their own personal life. Yeah. Maybe they just found out some really bad, overwhelming news, and they were striking out at you. So sometimes that's just a case of what happens, and just try to take it easy on yourself too, because we don't know what's going on with that stranger.
Right, it might have been all about them.
Yeah,
it's something really they could have just done some bad news.
99% guaranteed it was all about them.
Well, we believe in you, and we believe in your kids.
Like your child needs to get rid of some of that energy, so do we.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't make good choices.
And that is a learning opportunity for your child to say, wow, see what happens when you don't get your wiggles out in an inappropriate way? Maybe. I like to use those object lessons with my son to say who was angry there and who was actually in control of themselves. That's a useful object lesson as well.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch over to our final question, and we'll take some questions from you all as well. Jennifer's asking, all right, I have a quick request. I have students at work as well as kids at home who become fixated on one thing and have a hard time getting off it. Does anyone have experience with unlooping out Asperger's kids? Yeah, join the club.
Well, do we have experience unlooping them? No. No, we don't. I don't.
I have a little bit of experience on looping some.
Well, I don't feel the need to. I mean, why do you need to unloop them?
That's a good question.
It's if they're looping because they're anxious, then you interrupt the anxiety cycle.
Yeah. One of my favorite ways to do this is called a pattern interrupt, where you just ask them an obscure question. What's your favorite flavor of pickle?
Do you think cat food would taste good?
Just like they're freaking out about Minecraft or something, you just go, do you think cat food would taste good? Where did that come from? What? But then they're off the train and they have to get back onto a new pattern.
A lot of times we see this as a form of anxiety release, where they have to relive it and relive it and relive it and relive it because it's actually stressing them out, and so getting them to de-stress in the best, easiest, simplest way possible is the best way. And keep them on a time frame too.
Yeah.
And look to see what underlying things are happening with a kid that might be contributing to the fixation. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they have enough emotional support?
Yeah.
There are some fundamental things that if you look at those to see if those are happening and can work on those things, then this might be lessened. I mean,
So something else I would say is that sometimes the unlooping will only happen when the thing that they're fixated on is able to fully express. Like, there have been some things in my life that were sort of constantly plaguing me for like 8 years until they were finally fully expressed, and then they just went and disappeared.
Also, Asperger kids often loop on things because that is their interest. And it's not unusual for Asperger kids to have a singular interest that they want to explore in its entirety. And one of the ways to loop that out is to point out those relationships with unrelated things, seemingly unrelated things. So if you can branch out, like, for example, when I learned about all the mythology surrounding the Beatles albums, I became absolutely fascinated as a teenager with that. And I could tell everybody all the stories and all of the, and I'm sure people got
I
very
would
bored.
love to hear that at some point.
It is really interesting.
Yeah.
So
Frank's like, oh God,
anyway,
don't start.
Can you tell that I thought it was really interesting? And people had a hard time looping me out of the Beatles. And I think that if people got really sick of hearing it, then that could have been an opportunity to say this is the classic rock genre, or at least it wasn't classic rock back then. But these are other kinds of musicians you might like, or what are the kinds of songs you can ask questions that then lead into other areas.
Expand their fixation. Like for me, I hyperfixate on one thing, but I jump from one thing to the next. Like I go, oh, boing, 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 boing. I'm reading like 5 books right now.
Yes, he is.
But you don't even know which 5.
No, I know, but you do
But
focus.
the thing is that my interest sort of stays within one sphere, but sort of goes all over the place, and my sphere is now rather large. I mean, the things that I am interested in are like everything from gardening to building mud huts to like
high-level philosophical discussions about large groups of people and flows and spaces and all sorts of weird stuff. But they all sort of center around this same idea. So if you can find what like the big idea was, like at first in college I did I did IT and then marketing and then psych, and they all sort of centered around the idea of figuring out how stuff works and then helping people learn how that stuff works so they could fix their problems. Because this is passion.
Yeah.
What you're seeing is a passion for something, and it's. I think that the way to unloop an Aspie kid is to help them figure out how to explore those passions and how to connect them to other potentially interesting things.
It's also a great way to talk with them, keep yourself engaged with them, help them connect with you. If you learn about what they're looping about, what they're excited about, and also a chance to help coach them on what's going on with you. One of the traits of people with Asperger's is they don't a lot of times read body language or facial cues or tones, and so your kids are probably not realizing that they're looping and they're looping and they're looping and they're not even like paying any attention to what it's doing to you, and you're like glazing over. And so talking to them about that and practicing that behavior, it's actually a great life lesson to teach them. A lot of times they need to be taught that in a very kind, gentle, and even can be fun way. So that's an opportunity for that too. And
the looping or the fixation, I mean, that's a superpower. The other thing is embrace it. Ask questions, get to know your kid through this. Go on this exploration with them. Tie that exploration back into the other things that they need to learn about. Hey, my kid really likes ceiling fans. Cool, there's some physics there. We got motors, we got electricity, we got
optical illusions.
We got all different types of things that you can bring in
air and convection
to enrich the knowledge around this that's part of the topic. And I found a lot of kids to really appreciate that, and that starts changing the underlying dynamic and creates trust, and it creates communication, and it creates a comfortability with your children that they have with you, that that this can be a place to jump into with them, whether it's your own kid or a kid at school. Building that personal connection is huge. I am so grateful for the teachers who got to know me and for me, and then empowered me to be myself. Those
in 15 years.
That's what matters in the long run, not whether or not I sat down and was doing fixated on times tables versus division. Like those are the meaningful things for people.
The meaningful things. In 15 years, you'll remember that that kid had a lot of passion, and that kid will remember that you held space for them. And I don't think there's a better outcome.
No, and one of our other staff members, Travis, uses this term, which I love, is he said, with Asperger's are like little specialists. They have the ability to focus on something really specific and get really knowledgeable and good about it and good at it. And so I love that, and I use that with kids that I'm coaching. It's like, you are a specialist in this area. Educate me. And they have a very bright future probably in that area. So.
Whenever I'm building trust with my coaching clients, I do that as well. One kid, his thing was Lego. He built Lego and he worked at the Lego store. So like his thing was Lego. So I just start talking. I'm like, I have genuine curious questions about Lego that I've never just been able to answer and never really had the opportunity to. Like, do all the pieces have actual names? Or like talk to me about Lego. I have questions, and I was genuinely curious, and because of that we connected and he was able to trust me. So when I had him do the deep work, he was able to.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
It was a kid who knew gas prices, and the way we connected was that I could brag to him about how cheap I'd gotten a gallon of gas the other day. And that was kind of cool, actually, that I could meet him where he was instead of forcing him to try and come where I was.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take another quick break. We will be right back answering your questions. See you in a sec.
For a long time now, I've been sitting on the sidelines just trying to stay out of it, and just watched with thorough enjoyment at Danny's responses and the window into his life, and all of your questions and your incredible answers. And lately I've been chiming in, and it's really fun to be able to help parents who ask a question about experience with IEPs or experience with homework. It's extremely rewarding to be able to give back and to help the community. And you know what? I'm still learning to this day from all the other parents who share experiences. And it's actually pretty cool to realize that I'm, to this day, not alone in this world, and how common many of the Asperger characteristics are from individual to individual. I didn't know how difficult it was for those with Asperger's to try different foods. I didn't know that there was sensory overload. I didn't know how common it was for people like Danny to walk into a store like Kmart with fluorescent lights, and how common it was to have a meltdown because of the overwhelm of the lighting. It was a very, very lonely experience raising a kid with Asperger's. And fortunately, today there are many, many more resources available. And that certainly would have helped us raising our son, Danny. You are not alone in raising your child with Asperger's. There are many resources available in this world, and many parents have been through very similar situations. There's no reason you need to be alone in this world when you raise your child with Asperger's.
We are back answering your questions from the Facebook chat here. Gina is saying, so when my son only wants to play and talk about one video game over and over, and if he can't do it, he shuts down, that's looping. Yes, that is one name for it. Though I don't really see that as a problem. That's just him being obsessed about the interest. You can say, dude, I appreciate that. I have some other things to do. You know, you can set boundaries there. Like, please feel free to set boundaries. Trina is asking, how do I get my 21-year-old Aspie daughter to practice safety as a woman? I am not a woman, so I'm going to defer to the women.
I'll lead off because I very much see myself as on the spectrum, and I remember my mother being very deliberate, and she started with environmental awareness. We would go out to lunch, and she'd say, how would you be able to see who's coming in the door right now? How would you be able to see who's going to the restroom right now? And she would ask me questions about, did you notice how many people are sitting at the bar? And it wasn't danger related, and so I didn't feel threatened. It was merely awareness exercises for your environment. And once you can start to say, you know, especially if you're driving is another way to talk about awareness, not only because it's good for situational awareness, but also because it's good skills for driving to repeat, okay, I'm looking in my mirror, I see the person behind me, I'm walking on a sidewalk, who's around me. These environmental cues are really important, and people in the spectrum often miss them because they're really focused on whatever it is going on in their head. The environmental awareness piece is really key, because once you can see your environment, you can go to a mall and sit and say, does that person look, how does your gut feel when you look at this person versus this person? That's not necessarily judging their values, but it's learning how to get your child to tune into that limbic sense of safety.
Yep.
My father told me the first time I went to Atlantic City, don't go beyond the lights, stay to the main strips. New Orleans was the same way. I loved New Orleans, but every now and then I'd look down a side street from Bourbon Street and my gut said, you don't want to go down there, and I didn't. These are the things that we need to learn to tune into. And that way, when you focus on the environmental awareness rather than all the scary people that's out there, it doesn't have to be a traumatizing, the world is out to get you kind of lesson. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I love that. However, I don't think it's bad to, especially when you've got a 21-year-old, so you've got a young adult, to educate her on why is it important to listen to that gut, what can happen,
why it's important to lock your car,
why it's important to, you know, if you're walking alone at night, to look behind you, to, you know, to have whatever. I mean, I think it's important to educate, just as like we do any other female out there. But it's not just about environmental awareness, but why. Because the thing with people with Asperger's in general, they need to know why, and it's important to let them know why. That's my personal opinion. No,
well, because right now most of the young women in my life are younger, and I don't really want to terrify them about everybody that's out there. If there was an older person, then I'd probably be talking about some of the evil that people can do, but it has to be age appropriate.
Absolutely agree with that.
And I think that, you know, I have 4 daughters, so I can try to speak to this a little bit, because as a father, this is something that we worry about, honestly. And that is, you know, trusting, allowing your kid to make decisions and understand what those decisions feel like is hugely important. And the more that you empower them and the more that you give them the opportunity to test and trust their gut, the better off they are, in my opinion. You know, I've never been steered wrong when I follow that instinct, that feeling. And I trust it implicitly in my life, and I've been trying to teach my kids how to do that, because that's going to take them far. And being able to, you know, different people give out different energy, and, you know, people on the spectrum, I believe, can sense it a lot more. And so there's a lot of practice that needs to happen into understanding what all these sensations and feelings are, because we do sense them, we can sort them, we can understand them.
We probably sense the energy better than we sense facial cues and
so.
Expressions and things.
I mean, that's been my experience. And so, you know, the best thing is, you know, allow them to make decisions. Allow them to have control.
And to learn to trust themselves.
That's right.
So, Michelle's asking, is the Out of Defense Mode webinar first step? My 13-year-old grandson has many meltdowns, and she said we bought the course. That's the Deep in Defense Mode course. And Michelle, start with the Deep in Defense Mode course.
Sure.
It's a more in-depth version of the webinar, so start with the course and then go from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have one from Matthew for you, because it's a job-related question.
Okay.
Do you want to read it?
Yes. How do you deal with job interviews in a competitive job market to win over the hiring manager on your high skills, despite the social disabilities of Asperger's, to land the great career-level jobs? Wow, it's a loaded question. I can't answer that completely in like 2 sentences or less. There's a whole technique and an art form. I actually have a client right now that I'm working with on this, and it's taking 3 months to work through interviewing skills. So we do have a job skills course that's coming out that keep your eyes out for that. But in the short term, how do you deal with job interviews? So here's what I think is crucial. Role playing.
Practice.
practice, practice, practice. I mean, that's what I'm doing with this client every week, is role playing. So here's something you can do as a parent. Go online and type in the top 18 asked interview questions out there, and practice them. Sit down, write out answers with your child, and answers that they're comfortable with, that explain who they are. Teach them about shaking hands. Teach them about eye contact. And if eye contact's really painful for them, I teach my clients to look at the forehead of the person they're speaking with. Things like that, how to shake a proper hand, and how to ask questions. So the biggest thing is preparation before that child goes in. Knowing the top questions that are going to be asked. Typically, I have interviewed a lot of people. People are not creative when they're interviewing. Typically, they're going to all ask, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Give me a time when. So those are things that you want to prep your child for. And then the last thing is prep your child with some information on the company that they're interviewing with. Do a little research. Find something fun about that company that that child thinks is really neat. Something about stocks or, IT or something that they can bring up in the interview that they can actually ask that person. That's the key in the interview, is when the interview turns. At the end of the interview, the person interviewing is saying, do you have any questions? That would be the time for that child to go, yes, actually I was reading, on CNN that your stock did this last week. What are your thoughts on that?
Or you contribute to these social causes. Why?
One question that child can ask that is of interest to them, so they'll stay engaged, will flip that interview. So in a 5-minute chunk, those are things I would do, and practice those things for as much time as you can beforehand, and that will get the child comfortable with the interviewing skills.
I would add just one thing to that. Did you want to?
Go ahead.
When you're rehearsing, throw in some pattern interrupts. Ask them the cat food question, because when it's good to practice something coming at you from left field. It's good to practice how that feels and become more comfortable with it, because it's an uncomfortable feeling. And when somebody asks you a question you don't know, you need to know how to handle that and how to process it. And the way to do that is to practice.
And let the child know if they don't understand what the person's asking, it's okay to say, can you repeat that question, or can you ask me in a different way? And teach your child that it's okay to ask that, because really it's